Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. The show you're going to watch is titled, Where Do We Go From Here? And my guest this evening is Louis Womble, a fellow humanist and an interesting fella who we've talked about all sorts of things at the humanist gatherings on Sunday morning here in Portland, Oregon. So I thought I'd have him on the show to have you experience sharp stuff he's said to me and kind of scared me sometimes because he's so sharp. How you feeling right now?
Oh, good, Don.
Huh?
Good.
Okay, I'm nervous.
I'm nervous.
Okay. Well, I was pleased to see in your written material you gave me that you were a guitarist, among other things. So I asked you to bring your guitar, so during the break, about halfway through the show, we'll ask you to play something.
That'd be great.
All right, good. So in the meantime, we'll start with the first half of the show, which is what I call the bio segment, where I talk about who you are, and the viewers can get an idea, some details about your life and what you're doing, and so they'll know why you're saying what you're saying in the second half of the show. You ready?
Sure.
All right. When and where were you born?
Well, I was born in Salt Lake City, Don.
Salt Lake City?
Salt Lake City. I was born and raised in a little place called Woods Cross, Utah, which is, more people might know where Bountiful, Utah is. Woods Cross is just a little burg from that. Mm-hmm. Raised a good Mormon boy, and then I lived there until I was about 25, and got divorced and kind of got fed up with the whole local scene, and got out of there and went and lived in Denver, Colorado for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And I met my second wife there, and we moved to Northern California, and she hated the heat there and relocated to the Northwest and been here ever since.
Uh-huh. Very good. Do you like it here?
I love the Northwest. Love the Northwest. I spent the earlier part of the day out fishing on the Willamette River.
Today?
Beautiful day. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, beautiful day out there. And the
Did
rest
you catch anything?
No, but that's not the point.
Doesn't matter.
No, that's not the point. It's just absolutely gorgeous to be out there, and came down, have a lovely evening with you.
Good. Good. So we talked about we're going to talk about your national or racial or cultural heritage. Since you're a recovering Mormon, anything significant about that affects how you are today? Oh,
primarily yes. The Mormon religion has a lot of good values about it. I mean,
sure.
They're very family oriented, they're very socially oriented, but it's still, when you come to reason and you start having a reasonable thought, you probably can't be too seriously into the religions. They just don't conform to rational thought. Yeah. So, you kind of have to make that choice when you start having reasoning, and that happened with me when I was about 14. I started studying rational thought and reason, and just went, wow, this isn't reasonable stuff.
How long did it take you to move away from Mormonism and become a humanist? Did you know at that time you were a humanist, or did you discover later on?
Really, I didn't discover humanism until I was in the Northwest. And when I first saw the organization in the early 90s, it was this little organization that would meet at people's houses. And I joined up with them, and I kind of got disenfranchised because I was, I was pretty aggressive at the time, and I was saying to the organization, we need to associate with other people. We need to, maybe put out letters of, agreements with other organizations that we agree with, associate with them, and maybe letters of non-agreement with these others that we don't quite agree with, and let the society know where our stance is, more or less. And they didn't seem very, very willing to want to do any of that. So I kind of dropped out of it for a while, just because I was a little disenfranchised with that. Not that I didn't like the philosophy, I always did, always do, and still have. Mm-hmm. But it just didn't seem to be going anywhere. That's why when I came back to the organization, 5-6 years ago, and I found out that they had the regular gig going at the Friendly House, and 200 members now, and it looks like a more chartered organization that actually has bylaws, goals, and structure. I was a lot more happy with it.
Yeah, but then you get a bunch of humanists together, and it's almost like Unitarians. and to have them all to agree on.
Yeah, that's okay too. That's okay. That's why it's nice to have a charter and defined goals, and the structure there, I think, helps the movement be more meaningful.
Okay, makes sense to me. Yeah, I've been a humanist for many, many years. I'm a humanist minister, as you know.
Right.
Yeah, and still do weddings and memorials, that sort of a thing. And talk about your formal education some more.
My formal education. Well, I was at the University of Utah is where I was initially. I was going to be. Professionally, I've always been more mechanically inclined, so I was going to be actually a biomed mechanic and be more on the engineering side. And I applied to the Air Force. I had siblings who were in the military, and they let me know about military schooling, which is always a benefit. And I applied to the Air Force to their biomed program, and they went through my health questionnaire and found out that I had a history of epilepsy, and they wanted me to take an EEG to clear that up. And one of the reasons I was looking in the military is because low-paying jobs didn't have insurance, and so I just went over to the Army, and I failed to disclose that little point that I had that history. But they didn't have the biomed open, they had OR Tech open. And so I said, well, what's that? And my siblings further reminded me to make sure that my vocation had a real application.
Sure.
And it is, OR Tech's a real application.
OR being operating room
technician,
yeah,
correct.
Yes. I was a medic in the Army.
Okay, yeah. And so I got the 91 Delta schooling, OR technician, and I saw the nurses, and what they were doing seemed a lot more interesting. And so I was at University of Utah. I applied to their nursing program, and another benefit of being in the National Guard was alternative schooling. At the time, you can kind of think of it like everybody's doing now, the alternate courses like they have on the internet and stuff. Yeah. Back then, it was just an alternate program. It was by mail. It was, and so I enrolled at the University of New York. It was called Regents Program. At that time, it's called Excelsior now. Their associate's program.
Yeah.
Actually, I enrolled in their bachelor's program, and my advisor, I had finished most of the didactic portions for the baccalaureate degree, and she said, well, why don't you just take all of the associate degree tests, and you'll have your nursing degree, and you can finish up your bachelor's later. And so I just did, in 2 weeks, I took all the exams for the associates and passed them all. And the first clinical exam for the bachelor's was the last one for the associates. So when I went and took it, I had my associate's degree. I could apply to the board of nursing, take my boards, and get my RN while I'm finishing up my BSN. All as a benefit through the National Guard. All the testing was free, provided for them. There wasn't any charge for that, which was fabulous. So I did that, and that's when my family kind of fell apart. And I left, and I went to Denver. And I did intensive care nursing for a while, which was just fascinating. And I thought, well, this is what I'll do for the rest of my life. And so I had 5 years on that baccalaureate degree program before it lapsed, and it lapsed. And so I let that go until about 5 years ago, and it was just a lifetime goal for me to finish up my bachelor's. And I did it, which is a good thing because my employers now is requiring it for everybody. But they didn't then. I just did it as a personal goal, so I finished up my bachelor's there. And I did that through what's called Regis University, which is the Jesuit University in Colorado. I did that online.
You got fully accredited?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. And all the years went by, and then you decided to go back and clean things up and finish.
Sure. And which is too funny because I'm so I'm so secular now, but it's a Jesuit university. And I should have known better because I didn't really delve into it too much. It just had to be one of the more reasonable programs. I mean, they beat the heck out of Linfield here for price, and but of course they're going to have you do some religious studies. But in their defense, even though I had a very secular view on things, more atheistic views on things, when I explained it to them, my instructors came back and said, well, they think you've got a very sound philosophy to live your life by. It wasn't this, oh no, you've got to believe in Christ thing because we're a Jesuit university. No, they were, they were really above board with it, which I was surprised at and impressed with.
Of course.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself as an agnostic, an atheist, or one of those terms to describe yourself if you were
I
to
don't
choose
find
one?
myself, the atheistic thing I think is almost as to me, is as severe as the religious. To say
Yes,
there's
yes.
absolute nothing. So I would classify myself agnostic
Yeah.
in that term. Personally, I think we came from somewhere and we're going somewhere. We're kind of blinded to it for some reason. But, we don't have any proof about anything. And I'm a very proof-oriented guy.
Do you think you'll ever go back to being a Mormon again?
Absolutely not.
I feel the same way about
Absolutely not.
Catholicism.
Yeah.
And yet I have some warm feelings about things that went on when I was a kid going to Catholic elementary school. And of course, Mama always had a prayer book in her hand, and I'm the baby of 12 children. And she went to Mass regularly, and Lent and kneeling down and mea culpas and that stuff. But through all of that goofiness, there were some things that felt good to me. And I think about in my travels in Europe, recently I'm doing some more traveling, and going to the cathedrals. And the more impressive or big, architecturally beautiful, I found myself wanting to linger. And I sent my wife away. I'm going to be here for a while. I don't know how long. And you just go for a walk. And I'm behind the last row of benches, and I'm just standing there looking and experiencing. And there was something, I couldn't identify any particular thought or memory from my childhood, but there was something that I can't put my fingers on, but it felt good.
That's I think one of the things that I really appreciate doing that Regis program is some of the religious studies that I did. They talk about the transcendence, and the mystery that's there. And I think that's where the religions continue to persevere, is they touch an emotional essence in the human that really isn't touched and stimulated in a lot of other ways. It's what we do with music, it's what we do with arts, with what we do, with everything that we're trying to make that connection. And I think religion really stimulates that aspect.
Yes.
And for our secular organizations, our humanist organizations and whatnot to be really successful, they're going to have to find a way to stimulate that.
Interesting
like
thought.
the religions
Interesting
do.
thought.
I think to really be successful, and I think that's what we're lacking. That would help make us, be more successful and probably a more truly rounded movement in the secular world as the religious. Because to be saved is just fantastic. I mean, whatever you've done to have this guaranteed place and be saved, how can you compete with that? Even how foolish it sounds, how can you compete with that?
Well, how many humanists do you identify in our organization that are not tainted or somehow conditioned to have a mindset or a thinking process that is tainted by religious upbringing, religious teachings, and things that are not really rational? I'm having a hard time finding the right words. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do. Probably most. And in most of our society, for some reason, we coddle the fantasy. We all realize Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, and we can say that, but people just don't want to put that same, face on the religions. They want to hold that sacred as, a whole different thing, kill another commie for Christ kind of thing, which is, I don't know how we're going to get, as in our topic, where do we go from here? How do we really get into that next step of providing for the emotional human and that emotional need that seems to persist? That's a quandary.
And the we you're talking about is humans or Americans? Who's the we you're talking about?
All of us.
All humans?
All humans, yeah. How do we get to that next place where we're satisfying that fantasy need, that fantasy emotional need that I think is the reason that religions persist?
And then what will happen when all of us reach that stage?
Yeah.
What will happen?
That is the question indeed. I don't know. I'd like to see it. I'd like to be a fly on the wall for the next few centuries, because I think we're at a critical juncture. I think that the world has been tamed. It has been conquered. We're making some really impressive strides, I think, in all fields, but it's truly a world now. It's a joined world. I mean, you've got your North Korean holdouts and some places that are still holding out, but the world is really becoming one global situation. And so how do we transcend into that next level?
If we get to a global situation about all humans on the planet, what's going to happen to the huge gap in wealth between the classes?
Oh, well, that's got to be addressed. Somehow that's got to be addressed.
Will that be a part of the awakening?
Well, in a way, the way I see it, we're at that critical fork. We're at that junction where it's either going to be that nefarious World War III and a reversion into barbarism, or we're going to turn that corner somehow. Somehow we're going to turn that corner.
I hope I live that long.
I don't think I'm going to. I would too. That's why I say I'd love to be a fly on the wall for the next few hundred years.
Yeah.
And see which path we go down.
Yeah.
Because I don't think what we're doing now is sustainable for a lot longer.
Yeah. You said you're on a second marriage.
Actually, I'm on my third marriage.
Third marriage.
Third marriage.
And you have children?
I have 3 boys.
From which marriage?
1 from the first marriage and 2 from the second marriage.
How old are they?
They are, my eldest is 30, I have a middle boy 25, and a 21-year-old.
Did I ask you when you were born? That slipped by me there.
1961.
61.
61.
All right. If I would ask your best friend, who is Louis? What would your best friend say? Be your best friend. He'd say, Louis is what?
Sitting right here.
Be your best friend.
Oh, I would like to think that, he's a reliable family guy who's, a contributing member of society, and maybe a little leaning to the left, or maybe an idealistic fellow. A little on the optimistic, a little on the naive optimistic side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would that be accurate? Would you accept that how he sees you?
That's from my point of view, if that's the way he's looking in.
You betcha. And you have brothers and sisters?
I have 3 brothers and 1 sister. 2
Are
of
they
them
still
living.
Mormons?
The one says he is, but he smokes, drinks, cusses like a sailor. He's obviously a Jack Mormon.
I like that term.
And the sister never really has been. And no, the other ones in Utah are not. So that's pretty funny. The one that says he is in Colorado. So everybody else spread around is not. My family of origin, we all have the wanderlust because my father worked as a civil servant, and we did these things called TDY trips. Every 6 months we'd go somewhere for 6 months until I got into high school.
Really?
So we lived all over the place as a family. And we all just as soon pick up our bags and go somewhere else as be a bunch of homebodies.
So what do you think about that, thinking about it now? How was it for you?
Fabulous. Fabulous. He sent us all back at one point to live with his relatives in North Carolina because he knew we were basically based in Utah, and the scene that we had there, he wanted to give us another cultural look. I had an Aunt Edna who was a literal hillbilly, who was, Aunt Edna was, 92 years old, 98 pounds soaking wet, in her daisy dress, sitting in a rocking chair on the front porch, in the shack, in the hills, smoking her corncob pipe, drinking her whiskey. And it was, you'd go to her place and you go out, you'd be slopping the hogs in the morning and cleaning out the chicken pen and hauling in wood and fetching water and, working as a hillbilly, barefoot.
And you remember that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. it just blew my mind that this was like something you'd see in the movies. And it was a real live hillbilly. We get in an old, 38 step-side pickup truck, and after processing the chickens on Saturday morning, taking to market. This was a world I'd never seen. That's another place. That's where I got to see a Southern revival, an absolute Southern revival. people talking in tongues and flipping, and for this little Mormon kid to sneak under the tents and see all this going on. Whew.
Yeah.
Now, wow, we're not the only radicals in the world. These revivals are something else.
So you talked a little bit about your political persuasion. How far left are you? How far right are you? In the middle of what, generally speaking?
Politically, I'm an independent liberal. And that's as good as that goes. I'm not politically oriented to Democrats or Republicans, and that's really all you can be. I was a card-carrying civil libertarian for a while, but then they came up with some things I really didn't care for. It's probably with all the parties, is there's a couple of things that they do in their platforms that I can't stand. So I can't really belong to an organization that I have serious issue with one or two things that they do. I just can't do that.
You sound like me.
Well, that's why humanist is great, because there's nothing in their charter that I disagree with.
Okay.
I like all their tenets, and so I can fully support them.
Do we need a third political party in this country, or really a genuine alternative to the Democrats and Republicans?
Absolutely, an alternative.
What would that be?
In my mind, it would be political reform, is what it would be. It would be political reform and free candidacy.
Are these
Political, a political rundown free candidacy thing, and then get rid of the primary structure and the whole political structure.
You are radical.
Yeah. All of that would just have to go away.
Some would suggest that there's no sense in trying to reform those two parties. They're too far gone.
I agree.
We need a true. You consider those are two wings of the corporate parties?
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, are those the potential leaders of a genuine alternative party? Bernie Sanders?
I'm not that familiar with him.
Yeah,
I'm not that politically savvy.
He's the only socialist in the government, a genuine, avowed, outspoken socialist. And he's a hero of mine. He's cut from the same cloth as Ralph Nader and those kinds of real progressives.
Yeah, perhaps. I'd have to study them and then see what he's all about. I've just become so disenfranchised with the whole thing.
I hear you.
And it's so scripted, and so the whole political situation is pretty near hopeless.
Yeah.
Without major reform, without the way candidacy is done, the whole kit caboodle just needs to be thrown out.
Sounds like you're going to vote for Hillary Clinton.
Every time it comes down to voting, Don, I have a choice of bad and worse.
Yeah.
I don't really have anybody that I like.
Yeah.
I had a Gary Larson on my cartoon forever that just said, I don't know, which one are you going to vote for? I don't know. Which one do I hate the least? And there it is.
So let's ask one more question before we take a break, and then you can get ready with your guitar. That last question for you is, are there any persons from the past, alive today, that you particularly admire, look up to? Any names come to mind?
I always liked Jimmy Carter. I think he is the last president of integrity that we have.
I've heard that before.
I think, he honestly went into office and tried to do the best that he thought he could do for the country. I don't think it was politically motivated. I think the guy just had integrity. And he did. The guy outlawed styrofoam cups. What a just awesome thing to do.
Yeah.
And Reagan came right in and reinstituted it. Styrofoam should be gone. It's terrible.
Sure.
And there are great alternatives. And everything that I found that Jimmy Carter did, he thought he was doing the best for the country.
Are you familiar with his organization today? The Carter Center?
Some. I've researched it a lot.
Habitat for Humanity and a whole bunch of other stuff. He's a good man.
Yeah.
So, Mr. E, we're going to take a break now, and let's get you ready with your guitar so you can sing us a song. It's a song that you wrote yourself.
Very nice, yes. This song is called The Dare. And I've always wanted to make a song of hope. I wrote this. I'd like to, give ultimate kudos to John Lennon's "Imagine." I think that's one of the most fantastic songs ever written.
I agree.
This isn't quite like that, but it's going to give it a shot.
Let's do that.
All right.
Is he going to play now, or are you going to take a break?
He's going to take a break, and he's going to play it during the break. You ready, Mr. E? Okay, jump. You can start.
Well, don't call me a Christian if you want to be my friend. 'Cause when I think about forever, well, I consider the means a just end. If you want my pledge of allegiance, I won't consider guilt or shame. There are far too many charlatans seeking fortune and fame. Well, don't call me a Muslim. Shroud is way too tight. If Allah here can't save me, I think I'll still be alright. I'm making my own way now to the mausoleum of life. There are far too many charlatans who can't define their own strife. Strife. 'Cause you've got it. You've got what it takes. You've got it. You'll always be there. You've got it. Who else would you want? You've got it. To take on this dare but you. So don't call me a Christian if you want to be my friend. 'Cause when I think about forever, well, I consider the means a just end. Something like that.
Sounds good. And the title of that was
The Dare by Louis Womble.
The Dare, again, by Louis Womble. Very good. So I see what you mean. Your dexterity with your fingers and the sound it produces is just enchanting. I love it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I was a little off on that. I had to practice it today. I've got a keyboard that I'm actually practicing on a lot. I started out on a piano, and I always banged around a little bit on a keyboard when I had some bands, but I've never really studied the instrument and got good on it. And I actually haven't touched that thing for about a month and a half.
Oh, you sound fine.
Thank you.
So let's continue on with the second half of the show, because I want to thank my viewers for hanging in there and coming back if you went away during the break. For you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, kind individuals, and about whatever it is that we've decided to talk about. And we've decided to talk about where do we go from here, and we'll probably talk some more about what that really means. We talked about it earlier in the second half of the show. And where do we go from here? Interesting. So I've got a list of cheat questions that I'm going to ask you about and see how far we can go. And if there's any you don't want to answer, you can tell me to get lost or something and see where we go. What's most important to talk about today, from the top of your head? Climate change or healthcare or?
All of those. you know, I still come roundabout to the fact of there's too many people.
Too many people.
There's just plain too many people.
What do we do about too many people?
There's got to be population control.
How do we do that?
You can take any problem. You can take global warming. You can take socioeconomics. You can take food supply, and you can always come back to problem number one: too many people. So I just don't know, you know, how you can, you know, put everything else into a box and not talk about population. If you took half the people right now, all of the people I don't like, and sent them to the moon, you know, and when we turn it down to 3.5 billion people, there'd be plenty of everything for everybody. Global warming would go down. There'd be a lot of food. There'd be enough money for everybody. There'd be enough resources. So,
what's the model for limiting the population? What they did in China?
you know, if I were king of the world, I'd do something like that. There'd be a disincentive to having 8 kids. I work with somebody who's a good Mormon, and he just said, got another kid. It's number 9. First of all, I told him, I said, hey, dude, they know what causes that now. Yeah, all joking aside, it really kind of angered me. He makes good money, has a good lifestyle and whatnot, but you know the pressure that puts on everybody else.
What about the rest of the human beings?
Yeah, and you know my boys, none of them have had children yet. My eldest, probably the sharpest tool in the shed there, just said, oh, it's all too much trouble and whatnot. But you know, I think the younger generation is getting it. Intuitively, they are getting it. It's wonderful, you know, to see the, empowerment, I think, of women in a lot of the third world countries for birth control and their options. Though those are all great first steps, but, you know, primarily without some sort of population control, I don't see much sense in any of these other issues really being tackled.
Yeah, so... But we can do better with the existing population we have now, can't we?
Oh, always do better.
Yeah?
You know, global warming, is it real or not? Who cares? If we're doing something bad, if our science is saying, you know, these carbons we're putting out and all this stuff is bad, let's find better ways to do it. Who cares if it's really happening? They're saying it's bad, let's do it better.
What do you say to those people who say it's not true, that there is no such thing as global warming? Nature cycles the climate and those sorts of things through the years.
Those are valid arguments, and let's look at them. But our science is still saying that this is bad, so let's do it better. That's all. You know, I agree there needs to be a middle ground. And once again, that's I can't join an organization that has a couple of tenets that I don't agree with. But if our science is saying these things are bad that we're doing, these carbon dioxide, releases are bad, let's do it better.
Okay.
However they do it. Let's not shun Kyoto. Let's agree to do these things better.
Next question, is American primacy in decline?
Absolutely.
Why is that?
You know, I can't remember the studies that I've seen, but there have been many on, you know, the Romans and the Greeks and everybody. Basically, it's corruption. You know, there's a growth spurt, the old bell curve, and you get on top of it, and then you start going down. The only thing that this country has left is, you know, the money markets, and they're slowly getting leached out to other places, and we're going to be in, you know, third world country ourselves if we don't stem that somehow. It goes back to problem number 1.
Okay, I forgot to ask you a question earlier on. You're working nowadays. You're working.
Yes.
And what are you doing in your work today?
Oh, I'm a registered nurse. I work in a
hospital? Or?
And I work at a day surgery clinic.
Yeah.
Doing day surgery.
In Portland?
Yes.
And you enjoy that yet?
I do. It's doing day surgery for folks usually fixes their problem. Helps them with their thing that's wrong, and we send them back out the door with altered anatomy in a way that hopefully helps them.
Can you alter that little thing here? No, never mind.
Here, give me this. Okay. Come here, Don. Let's fix you up.
Okay. How do you think Obama's doing as president of our country?
Oh, he's doing fair to middling. He's doing an okay job.
What could he do that's different that would make it better?
Probably what he'd like to do the healthcare thing.
Interesting. What he'd like to.
Yeah, when he wanted, when he was asking Congress, I hated they call Obamacare in the first place. It should be called Congress Care. He didn't do it. Congress did it. Come on, people, wake up. Anyway, the public option. I was really for the Healthcare Reform Act when it had the public option on the table.
Yeah.
I know of an organization in this town that's a semi-socialistic organization. I really don't want to say names,
Sure.
but they are the model. Between them and the VA, the only way you can really rein in these costs, and I know this being a healthcare provider, is by controlling the vendors. And even this organization has to buy their stuff from people. They have to get from the vendors.
Sure.
And the vendors are just taking things through the roof. It's not the hospital, it's not the doctors, it's not those situations, it's the providers. It's the capitalistic side of the whole thing that is really driving cost out of this world. So if you took the Healthcare Reform Act and you would have had the public option, which would have been its own entity under its own umbrellas that could control as many of those costs as it could, you would have had a real option.
What about the insurance industry?
Insurance is designed to take your money and give you nothing.
The so-called
and they're very good at it.
Yeah. The so-called Obamacare still has the insurance industry involved.
Oh, that's all it is. That's all it is. That's what I'm saying. He had to throw that out for the Republicans to concede on it, even though they're absolutely spoiling and trying to get rid of the whole damn thing anyway. It's a great first step. They had to do something.
Is he compromising too much?
Oh, yeah.
What would happen if he didn't
everybody
compromise?
says, what do you think about that health care law? I said they didn't do enough. That usually, the Republicans that want to kill it. In our discussions, when I'm on a discussion with them, that stops them dead in their tracks.
What would happen if Obama was to follow up on what he said before he became president with a lot of his promises and his aims? What would happen? The things he said before.
Yeah, well, there's not a politician alive who doesn't say what he needs to say to get in. and then change his mind. My goodness, what is it? Guantanamo's still open.
Yeah.
He said that was going to close down, but he did get us out of Afghanistan. So he's done a lot of what he said he would do. I like him a hell of a lot more than I like the guy before him. Couldn't stand the guy before him.
Who's going to be our next president?
Probably Hillary.
Probably Hillary?
Probably Hillary. Probably Hillary.
You going to vote for her?
We'll have to see who the competition is.
You going to write my name in?
I liked John McCain until he absolutely turned belly up.
Poor McCain.
Yeah, until he rolled right over and took on that idiot as a running mate, I was okay with him. But he totally, was one of the big seven way back when all the reforms they did. I was for that, but he absolutely rolled belly up for the party, and that to me is a man of no integrity.
Are you a chauvinist? Don't you like Sarah Palin?
She knows all about Russia. They're right across the straits.
I can see him from my window.
See him from my window.
What do we need to do to return jobs to America? Those jobs that we shipped overseas and to Mexico and all kinds of other places, such that there's the working class is making less and less money, and it's diminished so bad until people are doing service jobs.
It's going to happen anyway. It's going to happen anyway. I think the masses of terribly underpaid and overworked foreign workers and whatnot. Like I said, I think it's a world market now. They are going to do things to demand their wages to come back up, and the folks that didn't believe this, we have enough fuel for everything, are going to be in for a rude shock when it actually is a limited resource. And it's naturally going to come back anyway in the world economy. Because it's just going to be transportation issues, and those, Indian and Chinese workers are going to demand more wages.
So your answer is that there's going to be no more jobs brought back to this country? There's going to be no more jobs brought back to this country?
My answer is they're naturally going to come back.
Oh, I see.
As the world economic playing fields level out.
Yes.
That they are going to come. So I don't think we need to really do a whole heck of a lot to bring them back. I think we should do more things to discourage them from leaving, and some of that's going on.
What would that be? incentives to have corporations come back and open factories again in Detroit or places like that?
Yeah, that would help. It'd be nice to see, you know, consumer pressure do it, but that just doesn't seem to be the way. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I know some of it is going to be coming back all by itself, I think.
Okay. Is the primacy of the U.S. dollar in jeopardy around the world? The primacy of the U.S. dollar.
Oh, absolutely. We're funded and underwritten by a huge amount of, you know, foreign interests. You know, the Chinese are buying up everything over here, and it once again, you know, we're over our primacy of a country, and sure. Yeah, I think we're in for some hard times coming up.
Yeah, what if some other currency replaces the dollar as the primary currency recognized around the world to do business transactions?
Well, then we're sunk. Because really, I think the only leverage we're holding over most of the countries,
print dollars.
Yeah, is our financial clout. You know, and if that goes, we're gonna be in some serious trouble.
Well, that's scary to even go any further with that. Is the disintegration of the Middle East the goal of the U.S. administration?
I don't know that it's this disintegration is.
It isn't integrated now.
Say it again.
It isn't integrated now.
Integrated?
Integrated. The countries in the Middle East now are at each other's throat, and there's shifting over a period of time, alliances and enemies and friends and.
Well, you know, the whole
with
thing.
Israel being at the center.
Yeah. You know, the whole thing is obviously, you know, energy. You know, is oil mediated. You know, and with what they're doing with fracking and everything going on here, I think there's going to be a de-emphasis of that relationship. You know, and hopefully so. I'm tired of seeing us being the policeman of the world, and you know, I just don't think there's a whole lot we can do for those poor people.
How did we get to be the policeman of the world?
Through our pursuing our own interests. First of all, you go over to Saudi Arabia and you drill all their oil wells and you buy out all of their governments, and then you create this state over there, and you drive your own wedge into there and make yourself put a target on your own back for those poor people.
Is that why there's so much revolution going on in ISIS and all those kinds of operations going on now beyond just the Middle East? And there's ISIS cells or kinds of movements.
Well, when they're removed, there's going to be another one, because you know you've got absolutely despicably poor individuals with no hope, in despair, and then you've got a radical religion that tells them who to blame.
Yes.
And until you ameliorate that situation, it's going to continue.
And they're right in who's to blame. American hegemony, American...
I don't know if it's right or it's just convenient to do. You know, and it's once again, you know, the only way, it goes back to problem number one. There's too many people. If we could get them the resources, if you take a satisfied, safe, provided for individual, they don't strap a bomb on their back and go blow it up in the market. So as long as you've got despicably poor people with no hope and a radical religion that tells them who to blame, you're going to have these issues.
What you're saying sounds like hopelessness and helplessness. The reality is we have too many people. It suggests that there's nothing we can do until we reduce the population. I'm suggesting we must do what we can now to have those people you're talking about be better off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you can raise their standard of living, you don't find a lot of the satisfied Saudis doing it. You know, so if you raise their standard of living, and once again, it's a natural progression, I believe.
Okay. Next question.
Sure.
What do you think of Putin?
He's as criminal as the rest of them.
The rest of who?
Almost, the rest of anything else is going on in Russian.
How about in America? Any criminals in government in America?
About a good 3/4 of them. There we go to that political system again. If you give a policeman money to make a decision some other way, it's a bribe.
Yeah.
But you can do that to a politician all day long, and you're contributing.
You're really hitting it hard tonight. How about Hillary?
Hillary, yeah, she's one of the better. One of the better that gets, I think.
Is she good enough?
Once again, you got a choice of bad or worse. She's not as bad as some.
And we got to have some other choice.
We'll have to see what the other choices are. And they're probably, the Republicans are just being such damn spoilers, they're probably not going to come up with a good one. They have a few options, but probably not going to come up with a good one.
Netanyahu, the guy who just won the election in Israel, so-called Israel.
Yeah. Don't know about him yet. We'll have to reserve judgment on that one, see where he goes. Once again, they've got a hard row to hoe over there. But I could take care of the whole Israeli issue.
No nuclear.
For us. No nuclear.
How would you take care of it?
Well, we would just need to, publicly back off, and we could still supply them with arms and whatnot. But we got to quit making ourselves the beating boy for most of their Islamic countries by being so overwhelmingly supporting to this thug state.
Israel?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
some have suggested that Israel is really a 51st state, and it's a tail that wags the dog anymore.
That's where I agree, and we could start backing, some more of the other Arabic states, and quit putting a target on our back.
Okay, I'm going to take a chance. This is kind of far out. I just sent this response to an email I got today, talking about Israel and Netanyahu and the election over there. My own personal thinking to this person who sent me this piece. Does Bibi's election advance the doomsday clock toward midnight? Yeah, don't have to answer.
Okay.
You've got three or four of these. Does his election encourage Jew haters to argue that the Holocaust was justified and that a new Holocaust is possible? Okay. I'm afraid, really afraid of the outcome of this election for all of us. Next point, my own solution, while seeming impossible, is to purchase from another country land that can serve as a new Israel and or repatriating Jews back to the countries they came from and returning Palestine to Palestinians. I got it. One more point.
Okay.
I do not hate Jews. I'm just totally repulsed by Zionists like Netanyahu. You think I'm going to end up on somebody's list?
Well, that's obviously the answer. I mean, but the Israelis really, if they would have patriated the Palestinians, they could have done something. But they won't patriate them. They won't expatriate them. They're just continuing to rub salt in the wound. Patriation would be a natural resolution of that too, but they won't do that either. So I don't know what the problem is there, other than our continuing to openly support them. Once again, reserved. You can sell anybody anything, but to openly support them, we could just back that right off.
Sometimes you got to go back and correct the initial mistake.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
The separation and this, the Balfour Declaration and that whole enchilada where they took that land from Palestine and gave it to these Jews who then are the kind of people who are doing what they're doing. And I'm not sure I don't think it's a result of their religion or there's something else. I'm going too far out with this.
No, I'm actually on your side with that. you know, the
something's gonna give there,
Palestinians are just darn right displaced, and you know, man, would you feel if they moved you up to Canada and wouldn't ever let you be here just because of some accord? It's you know, it's a pickle, no doubt about it. But you know, you can't magically go back and do that, but you could. In where do we go from here? You could quit supporting them so openly, and on the other hand, sell them on whatever they need.
You know,
at least we could show face for it.
What do you think of the 28th Constitutional Amendment?
I don't really know what that means.
The corporations are not people and money is not speech. The Citizens United reversed the Citizens United decision, saying that corporations are people and money is speech, and they can spend all the money they want, unlimited, to be sure that people speak for them rather than the ordinary citizenry.
You got me flat-footed on this one. Let's pass.
Yeah, there's a proposal that's going on in the country that's proposing that we have a constitutional amendment on the federal level that counters the Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court that says corporations are people. And we said corporations are not people and money is not speech. Because right now with the present system and this ruling by the Supreme Court, then corporations have the gates open wide. And they can put all the money they want to be sure in any electoral competition that the people they want to win is going to win because they'll buy all the advertising time on television and all other places like that.
Because they're not people.
That's right. So anyhow, let's leave that.
Yeah, I've got a thing to study on that.
Of course.
Yeah. I think I heard a blur about it, but I didn't pay attention.
Of course. Do you know of any successful non-violent revolutions in the past 500 or 600 years or so? Successful non-violent revolutions. We say women's suffrage, that's not really a revolution. There have been some revolutionary things that occur in America.
Well, I guess the Berlin Wall came down without a shot being fired.
That's kind of a category.
They're finally getting rid of some ridiculous drug laws in this state. So I don't know if those are revolutions.
Not really, but close enough.
Yeah. It's nice to see those movements actually happening.
Yes.
No, it seems like every revolution, and you know the problem is, unfortunately, that I think some of the socialistic stuff they did in Southern America had some. They were violent, and they're not. But problem with revolution is they're very good at tearing down, but they don't put in place what are we going to do.
Oftentimes. The other night I watched Dr. Zhivago again for about the 7th or 8th time, and I got more out of it this time than I did the other times that I watched it, because as time has gone by, for some reason or other I'm paying more attention, or my wife isn't interrupting me. It's 3 hours and 19 minutes.
I was going to say, well, that's a long thing to be paying attention to and getting things out of, so you can probably get things out of watching it 10 times, you know?
Yeah. The story is so intriguing in itself because it's a revolution, and I'm thinking about revolution in our country, non-violent revolution, so that things can change and we'll have some place to go in answer to the question, where do we go from here? A socially responsible system where the wealth gap would be sharply reduced and so on and so forth. Is America post-racial?
What does it mean?
There's some people who are arguing that America is past the time when we had lynchings and all those sorts of things, separations of blacks and whites.
No, I don't think it is. It's a lot better. I think it's a lot better,
of course,
than it's been.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, as that little Mormon boy in Utah, being sent back to North Carolina is so funny, because I would show up around all those people, and this was in North Carolina, and they knew I was this little Mormon boy, so they'd kind of mentioned the blacks and the blacks this, and then pretty soon this go into the N-word and whatnot, and I'd go into town, and after 2 or 3 weeks they dropped all pretenses, and I saw the racism that was in the South, and it was appalling. Yeah. Now, being a sheltered little boy in Utah, we didn't have many different races, so I just was not exposed to many different races. But I came back and I was rather appalled by the racism that I saw.
Yeah.
So this would be, this would be in the end of the 70s.
So on one hand, things are radically different. But on the other hand, with the police shootings and what happened in Ferguson and the whole system there, the poorest people, the blacks, were given citations and they were paying excessive fines in order to finance the whole infrastructure. There's all sorts of indications, and people of color are still making much less than the average white person.
Well, there's sexism too. I mean,
Yes.
generically, women are still making so much less, and so work still needs to be done, but things are better.
Of course.
So I would not say we're post racism, but we're post severe racism.
Okay.
We'll just quantify it there a little
That
bit.
makes sense.
Okay.
So let's stop now because you're running out of time. But you look at that camera right there with the red lights on and tell the viewers anything you want to tell them. And you have a minute or so to...
All right, first of all, start out with the Zeitgeist. Peter Joseph's movie Zeitgeist. You need to get that on the internet, and then hit Zeitgeist 2. And he will explain the evils of capitalism and how it cannot go on. And this will all lead into the Venus Project, which gets you into social engineering and Jacques Fresco's design on that. He is an engineer, a brilliant mechanical engineer who got into the social engineering thing, and will let you know how there's the possibility of the resource-based economy, which could save us all. This would be a whole different paradigm on our world. There would be no money. You can call it communism if you'd like. I think it's naively optimistic, but it is possible that our technology could save us. We could get rid of the money, and we could make this a paradise on Earth if we totally change things.
Oh, God, you're really far out.
There you go.
Okay.
Do it.
Some PSAs, you have time for a couple before we stop. To watch my shows on the web, go Google Don Bay on YouTube. There's hundreds of shows through the years of all sorts of interviews on there, and you'll find it quite interesting. And the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, is so important nowadays because our civil liberties are diminishing and being challenged. And we got to be sure our civil liberties are protected. That's our foundation in America. To learn more about humanists and humanism, and people like us, go to theamericanhumanist.org and learn about humanism. And remember KFC. Oh, I've got to remind you of KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable to you too. And you too, Mike, and you too, and you too. Thank you for coming on. So the mics are off now. We'll be on camera